To talk more about that, we're joined by Kaveh Shahrooz, a lawyer and senior fellow at the MacDonald Laurier Institute. Thank you very much for being with us, Kaveh. So could you tell us a bit more about Faezeh Hashemi? Who is she and what exactly is her relationship to the regime?
Good to be with you again, Laura. Faezeh Hashemi is a very interesting character in the Islamic Republic. She is, as her name suggests, the daughter of a former president, Ali Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani. She is by no means a dissident, but in recent years, she has been relatively vocal in speaking out against certain elements of the regime. Now, again, she is a beneficiary of her father's title and his past. He was very involved in human rights violations. He was known as a terribly corrupt president. But she, despite being sort of part and parcel of the system, has been critical at important times. She has on occasion spoken out in favor of rights of women. She's spoken out on the rights of the Baha'i community. And in this case, she has been speaking out against the insistence on removing the IRGC. So she's kind of an interesting character, and she tends to get the more conservative wings of the Islamic Republic very, very angry.
Might she have political ambitions of her own then?
It's possible. I mean, she has served time in prison in the past, so it's hard to imagine her being able to run for any major official position in the Islamic Republic, particularly given that she's a woman and the impediments that exist for women in Iran. But it's not inconceivable. But she seems to be taking a bit of an oppositional stance increasingly with respect to the regime.
Now, what do you read then into the timing of her arrest? Because it comes amid a lot of reports about a panicked and general paranoid atmosphere in Tehran following that spate of mysterious deaths that have been linked to Israel. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's very interestingly timed. I mean, the conversation apparently took place a couple of months ago on Clubhouse, if I'm not mistaken, which is a social media app where conversations like this are held. But the charges were announced yesterday. As you say, I mean, this is a very strange time for the IRGC. It feels itself under threat. Recently, there was a leadership shakeup where the head of the intelligence agency of the IRGC was removed. I suspect that it's an institution that feels itself vulnerable and doesn't want any more sort of bad publicity and bad discussions about it. And that may be part of the reason why Faezeh Hashemi was targeted in this recent legal action.
Now, do you think she perhaps hit a bit close to the bone with those comments about the IRGC and about how the regime insisting that they should be removed from the US list of terrorists is actually the reason that the nuclear talks have failed and why Iran is facing these ongoing sanctions?
I suspect she did hit close to the bone, as you say. There are certain areas in Iranian public life that you are allowed to discuss, but then there are certain what are people typically refer to as red lines that you're not allowed to cross. And if you cross them, you will be dealt with very harshly. The IRGC is one of the most powerful and feared institutions in that country. And I suspect that at this vulnerable time, particularly, it doesn't want to be publicly criticized. It wants to be removed from the sanctions list imposed by the United States. And it doesn't want to hear any well-known figures like Faezeh Hashemi speaking out against it. So I suspect that, they've become very, very sensitive, and that's the basis of this recent action.
And I should add, she's also facing blasphemy charges because of some comments she made about the Prophet Muhammad's wife. I mean, that is very risky. That could carry the death penalty in Iran. Is she taking a huge risk with this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect a comment like that has been added on to indicate that this is not purely a political charge, and it does, it could bring with it a significant punishment. But my feeling is that that's not really the reason why she's being targeted. It's much more of a political consideration. Her statements about the IRGC are really kind of what's at the core of this decision to bring charges against her.
Kaveh, great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Kaveh Shahrooz there at the MacDonald Laurier Institute.